The last image anyone has of Lars Mittank is a man running. He sprinted through an airport in Bulgaria, abandoning his bags, his phone, everything he owned, and vaulting a 2-meter fence before disappearing into a field of sunflowers beside a highway. Lars called his mom ahead of his disappearance and frantically claimed that people were out to kill him. And until now, he has never officially reappeared. His name was Lars Mittank. He was 28 years old, and he had been on a beach holiday with friends. That last image, captured on airport security cameras on the morning of July 8, 2014, has now been watched millions of times. A young man running, then gone. What makes the case so difficult to dismiss is not just the disappearance itself, but everything that happened in the 72 hours before it. The sequence of events is documented. The phone calls are recorded. The surveillance footage exists. And yet, despite all of that, no one has been able to fully explain what Lars Mittank was running from or where he went. Before we begin, let me know what city or country you're watching from in the comments below so I can say hi. Lars Joachim Mittank was born in 1986 and lived in Marne, a small town in northern Germany. By all accounts, he led a stable and grounded life. He was close with his parents, had a long-term girlfriend, and supported his local football club, Werder Bremen, with the kind of loyalty that tends to define a person in quiet but meaningful ways. Professionally, he worked at Wilhelmshaven, Germany's only deep-water port and its largest naval base, where he held a position as a power plant operator. The job required regular hearing examinations to ensure the safety and quality standards of the facility. Lars took his work seriously and genuinely valued his career. In late June 2014, Lars traveled to Golden Sands, a popular seaside resort on the Bulgarian Black Sea coast with a group of friends. It was a typical summer holiday: sun, beaches, bars, and warmth. The 2014 FIFA World Cup was underway at the same time, which meant that evenings in the resort bars were particularly lively. Midday temperatures during this period reached around 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Given the extreme heat, it was noted by his friends that Lars was not eating very much, though it should be said that he was still eating, just lightly. Soup, salad, and fruit. A fruit vendor on the beach later remembered Lars well, describing him as particularly polite, someone who bought fresh fruit from him regularly. When shown a photo, the vendor recognized him immediately. For the first part of the holiday, nothing unusual happened. Lars seemed relaxed. He played beach football with some recent school graduates who were also staying at the resort. They later described him as easygoing and pleasant company. There was nothing in those early days to suggest that anything would go wrong. Then came the night of the fight. On one of the final evenings of the trip, the group went to a bar in Golden Sands to watch the World Cup quarterfinal between Costa Rica and the Netherlands. The bar was decorated with flags from various countries, placed on the tables in typical World Cup fashion. Lars, wearing his Werder Bremen jersey and in good spirits, began swapping the flags around as a joke. Most people in the bar understood it as lighthearted. One group did not. A group of Bayern Munich supporters, members of a recent school graduating class, took offense, and the situation escalated into an argument. The tension was eventually diffused, and the evening continued. The group stayed until around 4 in the morning, the last to leave the bar. On the way back to the hotel, the group decided to make a stop at a nearby McDonald's. Lars, who generally ate healthily and worked out regularly, said he would skip it and walk back to the hotel on his own. The hotel was roughly half a mile away. According to what Lars later told people, he was attacked on that walk back. He believed his assailants were either Russian or Bulgarian, and he later speculated that they may have been hired by the Bayern Munich fans from the bar, who had reportedly told him earlier that evening that in Bulgaria, it was easy to pay someone a small amount of money to hurt someone. The beating was not severe, but Lars took a hard blow to his left ear. The next morning, he called his girlfriend and told her what had happened. She urged him to see a doctor. Lars initially hoped the pain would pass on its own over the weekend, assuming that no medical offices would be open. The group went out together one final time that evening, and the following 2 days were spent winding down. Then, on Monday, July 7th, they all had to check out of the hotel. Lars was still in pain. He was also thinking carefully about what flying home might mean for an ear injury, because, for his job, good hearing was not optional. He made the decision to see a doctor before flying and took a taxi with a friend to a general practitioner. The doctor's findings were straightforward. Lars had a ruptured eardrum and an injured jaw. He was advised not to fly that day, as changes in air pressure during flight could cause further damage to the ear. The doctor prescribed him an antibiotic called cefprozil, 500 milligrams, and recommended that Lars visit a hospital. Lars declined the hospital visit. His friend offered to stay behind in Bulgaria with him. Lars declined that offer too. He told his friends to go home. He would manage on his own. The rest of the group boarded their flight back to Germany. Lars checked out of the Golden Sands Resort and, because the area was in high season and hotels were difficult to find, booked a room at a cheaper hotel in a less familiar part of the city. The hotel was called Hotel Color in Varna, near the airport. That same evening, July 7th, Lars called his mother, Sandra. He told her he was worried that his credit card details might have been copied when he had checked into the new hotel and asked her to block the card. Sandra spoke with her son multiple times throughout the night, both on the phone and over text message. What she described during those conversations marked a clear shift in Lars's mental state. He told her he was being followed by 4 men. He asked her about the antibiotic he had been prescribed, specifically inquiring about one of its ingredients. He told her that people were trying to rob him or to kill him. Sandra would later describe hearing his heart pounding through the phone. She said he sounded terrified. Surveillance footage from inside Hotel Color captured Lars during these hours. It showed him pacing up and down the lobby. It showed him standing at windows, looking out repeatedly. It showed him hiding in the elevator. At around 1 in the morning, the footage captured him leaving the hotel for approximately an hour, though what he did or where he went during that time is not known. He returned to his room afterward. At some point between 3:20 and 3:30 in the morning, Lars called Sandra again. He told her he had left the hotel and that he was being chased. He was speaking quietly, telling her he was hiding. He said he was elevated and could fall. The call ended shortly after. At 3:36 in the morning, he sent Sandra a text message. It read, "Cefprozil 500, what is that?" 9 minutes later, he sent the same message again. Sandra, believing he was still hiding and that calling him back might put him in danger, chose not to ring him. Instead, she did something practical and grounded in love. She booked him a flight home. The flight was scheduled to leave Varna Airport at 4:20 in the afternoon and land in Hamburg at 9:45 that evening. She also sent him 500 euros. He never withdrew it. At 6 in the morning, on July 8th, Lars arrived at Varna Airport by taxi, carrying a backpack and a travel bag. The taxi driver who brought him there later told investigators that Lars had seemed strange and that his pupils were noticeably dilated. When Lars arrived at the terminal, he texted his mother to let her know he was there. Sandra confirmed that his flight was booked and suggested he visit the airport doctor for one final check on his ear before flying. The security cameras captured Lars entering the airport and making his way to the doctor's office without incident. Everything appeared, on the surface, to be completely normal. He was going to see a doctor, catch a flight, and go home. Dr. Kostov, who examined Lars that morning, later said that Lars had been acting nervously and erratically during the appointment. Lars shared his fears about the antibiotics he had been prescribed. The doctor examined his ear and told him it would be safe to travel that afternoon. Then a construction worker entered the room. What happened next was captured in part on the airport security cameras. Lars, according to Dr. Kostov, was overwhelmed by terror at the sight of the construction worker. He said, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." He stood up from his seat and fled the room. The security footage shows him running through the airport terminal in a frantic state and out through the front doors. He left everything behind in the doctor's office: his backpack, his travel bag, his mobile phone, all of it still sitting in the room. Outside the airport, additional footage captured Lars jumping a 2-meter fence. He ran into a meadow and disappeared into a field of sunflowers beside the Bulgarian National Highway A2. That was the last image ever recorded of Lars Mittank. The field of sunflowers, the highway in the background, a young man running, and then nothing. Every time I see that video, I feel like I want to protect him, Sandra said on a German television show per Mel magazine. I want to rescue him. In the years that followed, investigators and the public have tried to make sense of what happened to Lars during those final hours in Bulgaria. 2 broad explanations have emerged, and neither one is entirely satisfying. The first is a medical explanation. It centers on the possibility that Lars experienced a severe psychological reaction, either to the cefprozil antibiotic he had been prescribed, or to trauma sustained during the fight, possibly a concussion. Pharmacist Rada Pelivanova of the Bulgarian Pharmacists Union addressed this possibility, stating that there could be a connection between the antibiotic and the striking behavior Lars displayed, though she emphasized that this would represent a very rare side effect, one that could be intensified depending on whether the individual had taken other medications or consumed alcohol. In Lars's case, the circumstances of the holiday, including the heat, the physical injury, the disrupted sleep, and the stress of being left alone in an unfamiliar place, may have created conditions in which the medication's effects were amplified. It has been noted that Lars had likely only taken a small number of tablets by the time he vanished, which some find difficult to reconcile with the severity of his reaction. However, those who support the medical theory point out that a person experiencing hallucinations or a severe panic episode cannot distinguish between what they are feeling and what is objectively real. From Lars's own perspective, everything he was experiencing was genuine. The fear was real to him. The men following him were real to him. The danger was real to him. The second explanation is harder to quantify, but harder to dismiss entirely. It holds that something genuinely threatening was happening around Lars in those final hours, and that his behavior, while extreme, was not irrational given his actual circumstances. His mother, Sandra Mittank, belongs firmly in this camp. She has consistently stated that her son had no history of mental illness and that she believes he was in real danger. She has suggested that he may have witnessed something he was not meant to see, or become entangled in something he did not fully understand. Finally, some have clung on to the idea that Mittank might have been truthful with his claims that someone was after him. People have theorized that either the group that fought Mittank a few nights back or a private criminal enterprise was trying to capture or kill him. However, Police have not found connections between Mittank and any sort of illegal entity. The surveillance footage at Hotel Color, which captured Lars pacing, watching the windows, and hiding in the elevator, showed no evidence of anyone following or threatening him. The only person behaving unusually in that footage was Lars himself. That is the detail that gives the medical explanation its weight. And yet, the absence of visible pursuers in a hotel lobby does not necessarily mean that nothing was wrong outside of it. What happened in the forest beside the A2 highway remains unknown. The Bulgarian landscape in that area consists of open meadows and dense sunflower fields running alongside a major road. A person running into that environment without supplies, without a phone, without identification, and in a state of extreme psychological distress would have faced serious danger from exposure, disorientation, and the physical demands of the terrain alone. Whether Lars survived the immediate flight from the airport is a question that cannot be answered with the information available. Police investigated. Sandra Mittank hired a private investigator who searched in Bulgaria. She appeared on television in both Germany and Bulgaria, speaking about her son and appealing for information. She created and has continued to maintain a Facebook page called Find Lars Mittank, through which she posts updates and distributes thousands of missing person flyers. Over the years, reported sightings of Lars have come from various places, including one from as far away as Porto Velho in Brazil. None of them have been confirmed. None have led to a credible identification. Sandra has continued to hold on to a specific theory, that the injuries Lars sustained during the fight in Bulgaria caused him to lose his memory, and that he has been living without knowing who he is, possibly homeless, possibly unable to find his way back. It is a theory that allows for the possibility that he is still alive, that he simply needs help. There's a good chance he'll come back, she has said. He just needs my help. Lars Mittank was described by German police as 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighing 187 pounds, with dark blonde hair and a scar on his left forearm. Now, he would be 40 years old today. His case has never been officially solved. What the available record shows is this. A young man arrived in Bulgaria for a summer holiday, was involved in an altercation that injured his ear, was prescribed an antibiotic, was left alone in an unfamiliar city, made a series of increasingly distressed phone calls to his mother, and then ran from an airport in a state of terror, leaving behind everything he owned, and was never seen again. Whether that terror was the product of medication, of injury, of genuine external threat, or of some combination of circumstances that has never been fully untangled, is still unknown. What is known is that Lars Mittank was, by every account, a regular person. He had a job he cared about, a family who loved him, a girlfriend, a football team. He was polite to a fruit vendor on a beach. He was planning to fly home. The construction worker walked into the room, and Lars ran. The sunflower field is still there, beside the highway in Bulgaria. The footage still ends the same way it always has. A figure crossing the fence line, entering the field, and disappearing from the frame. What made Lars Mittank run that morning, and where that running took him, remains one of the genuinely unresolved questions in a case that has now spanned more than a decade. Sandra Mittank is still searching. The Facebook page is still active. The case is still open. And somewhere, either in the world or in memory, Lars Mittank remains missing. The physical evidence may fade, but the stories behind these final traces endure. We look forward to reading your reflections and theories below. Thank you for your time and empathy today. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.